Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another episode in the Sydney Railroad build. If you've been watching the series until now, you'll recall that in episode 16 I completed the helix. This week I'm going to get the sub-roadbed installed for the two mainline tracks that run through the canyon scene. So without further ado, let's just head out to the workshop and get busy. Well, having finished the helix yesterday, I did a bit of cleaning up, or tidying up anyway, put all the tools away because I was getting buried. The task for this morning is to start working on the two routes of sub-roadbed around the end of the peninsula, the start of the divided double track main line. I don't know quite how far I'll get today. It's only going to be a half day out here, and then I have other stuff to take care of this afternoon. So I'm just going to get busy, and I will check in with you again periodically. Well, I started by splicing two pieces of curved sub-roadbed together to make a longer curve. I got that approximately in the right place, and then I had to work on the post that supports the upper deck. The rear track heads behind it and will traverse a short tunnel cut through a pillar of rock which will hide the post, and the front track will pass around the front of it, just in a deep cut instead. The middle portion is now permanently installed in the right place. Next, I'm going to work on closing the gap between this clamp and the helix. This piece of plywood here is going to support the riverbed and the abutments for the two bridges. It's just tacked in place at the moment, as I'm not quite sure what height it's going to be. I'm thinking that's a little bit on the low side, but I haven't decided how much to jack it up by yet, which is why I haven't permanently installed it. And I don't really need to get that right just yet. Note how the risers at the ends of the plywood are on the outside of the joists, both at that end and at this end. So that makes it easy to install it at any height I need, just by cutting strips of wood the right width to raise it up. Anyway, let me get back to work on closing this gap, and I will be right back. Well, that is the gap closed. Some of the risers around here had to be a little bit non-standard, but they still work. I had to cut two of the risers at that point, so note that I've got my clearance test car out just to make sure, and there's a lot more clearance than I thought there was going to be, so we're good there. But better safe than sorry. Note that the sub-roadbed for the straight section is slightly wider and offset to the outside. That allows plenty of room for the easement at both ends. Most of this along here will be cut out for the bridge, but I'll determine that later on when I have the bridge to offer up. I've still got one riser missing here, and that is actually a benchwork joint, so I've got to work that out. But I'm going to leave that till tomorrow. It's already almost noon, and I have to meet someone this afternoon. And I don't like working on things like that when I'm also watching the clock. I want to be able to concentrate on it. Hopefully that way I can get it right first time. I have been testing the clearance with my double stack around here, and they miss by more than the clearance on the helix. Anyway, I'm going to pack up now, I'm going to go in, and I will see you again tomorrow. Don't go away. Well, it is Friday today, and the first thing I did this morning was to sort out this benchwork joint. I put this special riser in with an L shape that goes over the top of the lower track. I cut through the sub-roadbed with the multi-saw, and I added a splice block, which is screwed and glued to this piece, but it's only screwed from the bottom to this piece, so those screws can be backed out for disassembly. It's the same method as I used at this end, except that we didn't already have a splice plate underneath it, so I had to use short screws there. This one, with the splice plate being already there, it means I have the luxury of using longer screws. Anyway, the next thing I did was to put the corner formers in, the one this side, and a similar one this side. Note that this joist, this diagonal joist, is important, as is this piece, because the two of them together support the semicircle and stop it from sagging. So even if the diagonal joist isn't necessary for roadbed risers, it still needs to be there to hold the structure of the fascia. Anyway, with that done, the next task is to start working on the other track, the outer main, which is going to come around the outside of that about 5 inches lower. It has a 40-inch radius curve in this corner, with the two tracks being fairly close together, and then it curves out almost to the front of the benchwork and has a minimum radius curve in this corner. It will cross over the river on a trestle, and then the canyon will be between the two tracks. So let me get back to work, figure out how to do that, and I will be right back. Well, the sub-roadbed on the outer track is now continuous across the first two sections. One section joint is here, and the next one is here. This is a pre-cut piece of 40-inch radius sub-roadbed, and just as on the inner track, I put a wider piece through the straight, offset to the outside to allow plenty of space for the easements. This wider piece of sub-roadbed here is just the size of the piece I had, and it's convenient because there'll be a short tunnel there, and the extra width provides more space to anchor the portals. You may notice some extra holes here. That's because I changed my mind on the location. I moved it about an inch. It was just a small adjustment, but by imagining the shape of the scenery here, it made a lot more sense. Anyway, it's about lunchtime, so I'm going to go in and I will continue this afternoon. Don't go away, I will be right back. Well, this area may look a bit chaotic at the moment. That's because in order to get the sub-roadbed around this corner, I need to get the river in place so that I can work out exactly where the trestle is going to be. Now, the river's not going to be anywhere near as wide as the base for it, but I also want to use the plywood as a solid base for the trestle that crosses it. It'll be a 3-span trestle, a scale 210 feet. It'll start just past this riser and go to about here, with the middle span crossing the stream. There's no real rhyme or reason to exactly how big the plywood bases are for the river. I'm just using up offcuts, being sure to give myself some tolerance. As I said, this stream will not be anywhere near as wide as that. There are a few steps because there's going to be rapids down here. The most important rapid is the one here. I never like to put flat water across a benchwork joint if I can help it. Just in case there's some slight movement, it might someday cause cracking, which will look bad across flat water, but will be a lot less visible on a rapid. Anyway, now that the riverbed is in, or at least the important part of it is in, I can continue with the sub-roadbed around this corner. This is just temporarily clamped together from two pieces of 36-inch radius pre-cut sub-roadbed. The piece across the end, I deliberately used a much wider piece because there was a very broad curve on it. So the 5-inch wide strip gives me plenty of tolerance. Anyway, that's enough waffling for now. Let me get back to work and I'll check in with you again later. Well, it is Monday morning again. For some reason that seems to happen every week. Anyway, I came out here with the main task on my list today to extend the sub-roadbed for both tracks through the mountain scene. Quickly became apparent that I needed to get the rest of the riverbed in, so I did that first. There's going to be some waterfalls in here, and then it runs all the way along the front edge as far as here. I've also put some plywood in to support the river and the bridges on that section. And And now I've got the next piece of sub-roadbed installed, and all the complex risers had to bracket it around the lower track, making sure that my double stack cleared. Anyway, that's about all I have time for this morning, so I'm going to go in now, get some lunch, and I will come back out this afternoon and extend the sub-roadbed some more. So don't go away, I will be right back. I made a slight modification over at this point. With the 20-inch tall risers, the two ends of the sub-roadbed at this point were able to flex a little more than I wanted them to. So I've put a block between the two. Each half of the block is glued to the nearby riser and it comes apart in the middle, and there's a bolt through there. That means there is only about 7 or 8 inches to flex instead of 20. And that is a whole lot sturdier than it was. The other way of doing it would have been to put a splice plate at the top, but I wasn't convinced that I'd be able to get the screwdriver in to dismantle it and reassemble it because of the shape of the scenery. So that's why I did it with the bolt instead. The next thing I did was to glue and screw together about another 10 or 11 feet of sub-roadbed all the way over the next benchwork joint and the one after that. Haven't cut any risers yet. At the moment it's just temporarily resting on these bricks. It turned out that 2 bricks on edge was exactly the right height. Well, at least close enough to build it anyway. What I've got to do now is get the level on it, cut a bunch of risers and install it permanently. So let me do that and I will be right back. Well, I've put 4 more risers in. I'm not going to go any further with the risers at this point because somewhere around here I've got to start going down grade because I'm a couple of inches higher here than I am over the other end. So what I think I'm going to do is start from that end and work my way towards where I have been working, because it's not really critical where the grade ends. What is critical is that it's a smooth grade and not too steep. So change of tack. I think it's probably safe to remove the spacers now. This end is as rigid as can be, being about 8 feet wide and properly braced across the middle. The only bit that might still be a little flexible is this section here beside the center wall. But by getting the plywood in this morning, that is now as stiff as I can make it. And I did take the precaution of gluing those in as well as screwing them. In most cases, the riverbeds are only screwed down. So let me remove these spacers. Hopefully the peninsula isn't going to move, because I've been climbing over these enough and I'm going to be in and out here about 20 times in the next hour. So let me get on with that and I will be right back. Well, the grade for the rear track is now installed all the way along, all the risers. This big gap here is where the trestle goes. That riser there is just to stop it sagging under its own weight. It's kind of late, it's nearly 6 o'clock, so I'm going to go in now and get some food, or feed Zeus first, and I will come back out tomorrow and work on the front track. So don't go away, I will check in with you then. It is Tuesday morning, and my task for today is to get the second track through here up to the same state as the first. So put about 30-something feet of sub-roadbed in. It's probably going to take a little longer than the other one because there are more bridges. I've just mocked up the approximate location of the first of those bridges. It's going to go across the river at approximately that point, at that height. Yesterday I used up 1 full sheet of plywood and all my good size offcuts. So today I'm going to have to cut another sheet. Let me just make a few strips of various widths and I'll start from there. So don't go away, I will be right back. For this first piece of sub-roadbed where the curve approaches the bridge, I've decided to make it a little bit wider than it would otherwise need to be. I want it to line up with the edge of the frame. That way it can eventually support the top edge of the fascia without having to add more framing in there. This shows my method of getting everything plumb, with 2 levels just clamped at the bottom of the frame and used as a gauge. Then all I've got to do is make sure that the sub roadbed just touches both levels without actually pushing them over. Well, just like yesterday, I started from this end. I got this piece finished in the right place, and then I jumped ahead. I got all the risers in around the middle section at the right height, and then I jumped ahead again, and I worked my way back from this end. Where the grades divide, the rear grade climbs up and the front grade drops down, in both cases just under 1.5%. And then when they come back together here, they are terraced with a 5-inch retaining wall between them. It's about time to go in for lunch. When I come out, I will continue with filling the gap from here around across the bridge to there. So probably 10 to 12 feet more after lunch, and then that grade will be done. So don't go away, I will be right back. Well, I was wrong this morning when I said I thought this second grade might take me longer. I've only been back out here less than an hour since lunch, and for the most part, the second grade is now done. There's a few more odds and ends to take care of, but all the sub roadbed is in, and all the risers are in. What I've got to do next is plot the track alignments accurately. I deliberately used a wide piece for this bridge location here because I'm not quite sure where it has to be. So by using a 5-inch wide strip, I have some leeway. So let me start marking out the track locations. Stay tuned and I'll be right back. Marking out the sharp curves at the end of the peninsula is very straightforward. I just use my curve templates that I cut many years ago. When it comes to marking out much broader curves, let me show you my method for that. I start by extending both tangents to find out where they cross, which is here. And then I measure the same distance in both directions. In this case, I measure 22 inches to there and 22 inches, it's just under the edge of the brick. And then I line up the bricks with the tangent tracks and clamp my metal straight edge to it. That holds it perfectly in place, leaving me both hands free to draw along it. And I have no idea what that curve radius is, but it's pretty large. Now, rather than just leaving it to sit where it wants to, I gently push the middle of the curve outwards just a small amount, and that gives me a slightly sharper radius in the middle, which means that I have proper easements at the ends. I forgot to do it the first time, which is why there's now 2 lines. The inside line is a circular curve, and the outside one is the easemented curve. So let me just go away and do all the others now. Stay tuned, I will be right back. Well, I've now finished marking everything out. I started at this end and I worked my way all the way around both tracks, and then I started from the other end and came back to here, finishing in this corner. For the most part, this is the back side of the foam rubber roadbed that is marked, but in this corner, these 2 lines, that one and that one, would have intersected over there somewhere off the plywood. So I worked out where the front of the foam roadbed is, and I used that as a guide for that corner instead. So as we can see, everything is marked out all the way to the end. That is all I'm going to do today. I've picked up all the tools. I'm not going to be out here for at least another week, because tomorrow I am taking my mom back to Michigan. And it'll be a few days before I get back. So I'm going to sign off for this week, and I will see you next time. Well, that's all for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the show, found it interesting or useful or both, and I hope to see you back again next week. I haven't looked ahead at the raw videos to see what it's going to be about, so it'll be a surprise for both of us. And I hope to see you back here for that. So in the meantime, thanks for watching and bye for now.